Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the fourth season of Second Sons. As always, I am Roy Rogers of the Philadelphia Meta. I am joined for the 50th full episode of Second Sons. Yes, we have done this for 50 episodes, which is kind of ridiculous. That's like 100+ hours of Second Sons for you to listen to. Joining me for our 50th regular episode is very special guest, Second Son's biggest fan, the hero of the Gen Con after party this past year, Trey. Awesome. How you doing, Trey?
I will take that and be proud of that moment. It was cash could solve a problem.
It was a great moment. It almost killed Nick Hansen and Sam Bratz. So it was a great party. I'm also joined by many of my other co-hosts here on this 50 episode journey. Joining me are my co-founders of the Second Sons, Andreas and Glazer. How are you guys doing? And Glazer, in honor of the 50th episode, you do get to talk on this segment. How are you guys doing?
He's going to ruin it.
I only get to talk because the chat is literally empty.
How are you doing, Buzz?
I'm great. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Can
I don't know
you
what's
hear
going on.
me?
I can hear you just...
So, during the intro, there were 5 copies of the sound going.
Nice.
So, try to solve that.
Okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
That'll be interesting when I put up the audio version later this week. We'll do this in order. The first person to join Second Sons after Dark Knowledge left is not here tonight to celebrate with us, and that's Sid. Shame, Sid, shame. But then we were joined by our next person to join Second Sons, the champion of my heart, Chris Schoenthal. How you doing, Chris? Former North American champion.
It's pretty rainy out here in San Diego, as you might have seen from my video this morning. So traffic's been crappy, and I just spilled my delicious beverage on a hat that I haven't worn yet. So the last 5 seconds weren't great, but other than that, it's been going all right.
Okay, well, I'm sorry the last 5 seconds have not been very good. Well, hopefully we can make the next 2 hours of your life good.
Always.
And then we are not joined by the next member to join Second Sons, and that's Sandy Barnabas. Again, Sandy couldn't make it here for our 50th episode. But we are joined by the newest Second Son, who chose not to play poker in Wausau tonight, unlike the last episode. How you doing, my favorite D-Gen and hand to the king for Thrones War? How you doing, Jesse Carpenter?
I'm doing great, as always. Yep, super excited for this, so should be fun.
Cool. So we'll just do a very selfish announcement for me to sort of kick things off. We are going to talk a little bit about the fact that the Northeast Championship Tour, the first date and a half have been announced, which is that Winds of Winter will be kicking off the Northeast Championship Tour on February 23rd, 2019 in Boston. So if you are able to make it to Boston this winter, please come and join us. Than is going to organize a fantastic event, and I'm really excited to attend, and I'm sure last year was an amazing event, and I'm really excited to see how this year's shapes up. But we also, the full Facebook page will be going up at the end of the week, but I'm also happy to announce that the Northeast Championship Tour Next is also partnering with the Road to Stalik this year to make the second annual Road to Stalik event here in the United States next to KublaCon, which is, of course, the Storming of Starpike, which is the following weekend after Winds of Winter, which is March 2nd. And if you come out to Philadelphia for that event, you will be able to win a flight voucher of up to $500. A first-round buy at Stalik, accommodations in the castle, and accommodations for Red Saturday, and a first-round buy at Red Saturday. So if you win that event, you're getting a lot of value out of your victory. So we hope to see many U.S. players here in Philadelphia that weekend, and, of course, the weekend before that in Boston. So
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
First of all, any possible way we could get our hands on those House Tully cards just the week before at Thrones War? No reason why. I just want that
But
House
you can
Tully
purchase
card.
them at the Storming of Starpike if you're there for the RTS. So
Yeah, I traded in my GP flight today to trade that to go to that. I think a lot of Wausau's coming.
Ooh,
Whoa.
that's exciting. Oh wow.
Free trip to
All
Stolic,
right.
baby.
Yeah, it's a great deal. It's huge
It's
value.
free
so
trip to
I was
It's at least one of the ways to stall it. So
really.
depending on when you book your
Yeah.
tickets.
Let's try.
Any? You have another question, Jesse?
I asked two, I thought. I don't remember.
Well, you asked two. I don't know if you asked one. I have no idea. Anyway, I think we should talk about Jesse's win at IO Worlds and the huge success that Kyle did there. If Sandy was here, we would definitely do it. But since we've only got one person or two people, I guess Show and thought you were at IO Worlds too, right?
I was.
We would, but Trey can't be with us for the full 2-hour experience. So he has spent the time to prepare for us a Thrones War draft retrospective, because Thrones War content is one of the things you tune into for here at Second Sons, because it's probably our most covered event of the year besides Worlds. So Trey, what do you have for us? How have you come at this draft? How have you analyzed it? And what do you got for us?
Well, this is not like a presentation. It might be a presentation, but I do want this to be a conversation.
You have a PowerPoint. I'm pretty
I
sure.
do
that
have
means
I do have a PowerPoint. Yeah. First off, I just want to say that, Ryan runs a great event. I've had so much fun last year. I'm looking forward to it this year. And I'm not a very good Thrones player. I haven't played a whole lot. But I feel like this is an area where my other experience in other games playing rotisserie baseball can be brought to bear, and hopefully that can make this event a little bit better for the owners. And so if it's not doing that at any time, then we'll stop talking about the auction and just have a great event.
Before you get started, Trey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Were you looking forward to it more before the draft, or are you looking forward to it now after you were betrayed by Lucas Sidlasky and not drafted by his team despite the fact that you were available to him and you want your revenge? Is this a revenge storyline now?
This is not a revenge storyline, or at least it's not one that I will admit. But it does hurt a little bit. We set a whole policy ahead of time about how this would work, because it was probably unlikely that I would end up on Team Banff. I knew that was a distinct possibility, and I didn't want them to overbid. Generally, if you're in the draft, you don't actually want a team to pay too much for you. You want to be a value for your team. And, we assigned a value to me on the team, and it was $3. And so, by our own numbers, Jim overpaid for me by $2. If there's some betrayal, it was that at that point in the draft, Sid said, "Trey, I think it's time. It's time to put you up." And I said, "No, it's too soon. It's too soon." He's like, "No, I'm doing it." And that was the betrayal right there, because I knew it was the wrong time.
We did
Top
bid
10 anime
4,
betrayals.
right? We did 33% more than your value.
That's right. You did go to 4, so I should be really flattered that you would extend your budget like that. And so I hope that Gershom really does a lot for Team Targaryen, then I guess is what we should say. So just before we kind of get into this conversation, the thing that I absolutely am not doing in this, and I even have almost no opinion on, is who are good players, or what people specifically whether they're good or not. That was kind of Sid and Buzz's job to kind of rank all the players, and all I'm doing is trying to apply math to how do we do an auction like this. So maybe to bring our few viewers up to speed on how the auction works, do you want to put up the PowerPoint there, Buzz, or at least the beginning?
Where can we see it?
Yes.
Oh, sharing it
Skype,
on Skype.
Nice.
I keep forgetting it's shared to me, and I keep trying to click, show me these slides.
All right. So, let's just look at like the basics for people so they understand what's going on. So the rule in Thrones War is that each team gets, $10 per slot. So we've got 8 teams.
Hey, dude, can we pause?
Yes.
Can
You want to do your
actually
animation?
can you actually use the nice slides I made for you? Control F5. Go back to the first
Present.
one and then Control
Okay.
F5. Thank you. And then you use the right arrow key.
Oh my god.
This
Oh,
is for our 50th episode. We decided to go multimedia, and you can see it's working really well.
So one of the things I've learned is you shouldn't use the frills of PowerPoint while giving PowerPoint presentations. So
You should. I work with this more than live streaming. I work with PowerPoint and slides. Yes, use the right arrow key.
Yeah, he got invested in this at some point, guys. When he
Buzz
edited
did some
things.
amazing graphic design for that stream. So while this is being figured out, while the right arrow key is being figured out by
Okay,
Trey,
I will
do
start.
want to shout out Showenthal's really good stream that he did for this. It was fantastic. Buzz did great graphic design, but Chris was a great host.
Dapper as fuck.
It was definitely too hot for Twitch. Like it should have been marked not safe for work. And I was watching it totally at work, and it was bad.
I had Chris and was it Evan, yeah, in my other ear, and Trey and Sid in the first. So having live updates from the Skype call of the stream was perfect. Extra analytics.
It was huge viewing too. Like, didn't we get up to like 80 people, 90 people at some point watching it? So there's definitely an interest in this.
That's really cool. I'm glad to hear that it went well for everybody.
All right, so 8 teams. We've got 11 based on our player count this year with, I think, 79 people. That's going to be 10 players per team plus the hands and the regents. So 10 players, one house, $110 budget. And so that's going to give us a total of $880 that we're pulling from for everything.
And no mercy.
So, Buzz, are they actually seeing my screen now? So my timing matters, or are you still mimicking?
I'm mimicking.
You were mimicking.
I'm mimicking for the stream, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, just again, for figuring out how this math is going to work, we play 7 rounds. Every team plays every other team. So 8 teams, 7 rounds. So there's 4 matchups of 2 teams playing each other with 11 players per team. That means we're going to get 308 Swiss wins and then another 31 wins in the elimination for a total of 339 wins. So that's what we're competing for with our 880 total money.
Sorry, coughed. Continue.
Aaron Glazer, everyone.
All right. So one of the things we did is I did not actually try to rate the regents for wins. I just said in general, regents will probably average about 5 wins. Generally go 5 and 2 once we include some extra wins in the elimination. For what it's worth, last year regents actually did terribly and averaged only about 4 and actually exactly 4 wins per regent. But I think that was an anomaly, and we'll see the regent wins, especially this year, really go up. I'd be surprised if they averaged less than 5 wins as a group. So again, we take our kind of $880 total budget, and then you just have to guess how much of that money is going to go towards houses to determine what your player budget is. And in this case, we end up with 752, which means that you're buying wins at about $2.52 per win. Now, that does not mean that you want to necessarily spend that for every single win. A 2-win player is not worth $5. A 2-win player is probably worth, or this is what I'm kind of, one of the things I'm arguing today is that a 2-win player is probably worth worth $1, because especially given the Swiss nature of things where you kind of get pushed against certain players at the top and the bottom, your wins and losses get pushed towards the center. So it's actually kind of not that many people will actually get 0 wins or even 1 win. So your first time you actually want to pay for anything is kind of like once you get to 2 wins or more. Just a thought there in terms of how people should be pricing. So let's talk house predictions going in, because we actually did a lot of work on this with Sid and Buzz. Here's actually the actual numbers that we had going into the auction. The value was what our spreadsheet says. The prediction was what we thought they would actually go for. And so that's how we allocated like the 125 bucks that we thought would go to houses. Here's what actually happened in this year's draft. So the actual column here is what houses actually spent. So with the exception of Night's Watch, for which there's a very good reason, I think we did a pretty good job of predicting house values here. If I'm the Mel Kiper of Thrones War drafting, I think this points out, at least, maybe I'm not saying where there's good value, but I was at least pretty accurate about how people were going to spend their money.
Sure.
On this. Does anybody have any questions about my prattling on?
Why did you predict that Night's Watch is going to be so low?
Okay, so we actually
based on their performance in like the previous war tournaments.
Yep. So this was a couple things. Buzz and Sid had opinions about this.
Sure.
And also we did extensive, we actually did some player surveys, asking a lot of people who weren't coming to Thrones War. Buzz could tell you who was in on this, but we did a survey in which we asked people how ranking the houses both from like 1 to 8, but then also saying like how much better do you think a house is in the current meta for the Thrones War format, knowing that you're going to have to run a number of different agendas. And so
Sure.
what did we get, Buzz? Like around 12 responses from players that we reached out to?
Yeah, most notably Holtman and Wama, but some UK players, some Swedish players, I think are the main bulk of the survey.
Can I ask a question though?
Sure.
How many of those people actually played in a war event? And
me, Trey, and Sid.
These all look super spot on to me, except the Night's Watch one.
agreed.
So what you'll if you read what's written in the responses, me, I think Trey, Sid, Wama, all said Night's Watch is pretty terrible right now, but they always overperform in the war format.
Yes.
So we knew this.
I mean, I'm a little bit
but-
biased because I was just like
but-
Lord Commander for Thrones
Sure.
like Thrones Toberfest.
So
But, like,
we definitely
I
pegged them as being better in the Thrones War format than
Okay.
they were outside. However, they ended up being there down there after rigorous discussions.
I mean,
Yeah.
this also
And-
may reflect a little bit the way Sid and Buzz were feeling about what houses they wanted to play a little bit. Like
A
of
little
the
bit,
big
yes.
3, I think you preferred to play Targ, and then
Yes.
are kind of
We wanted Stark or Targ, not Greyjoy, even though we pegged all 3 of them as being fairly close. Like we have the top 3, and then we had a top 6, and then a bottom 2.
Our numbers were very close to this, but we had it pegged as like we wanted Stark or Greyjoy, but there was no way we wanted to play Targ.
Yeah.
Or could play Targ.
Something that ended pushing up Tyrell was discussions with Wama. He explained to us.
Wama like Tyrell, eh?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
But what actually made me listen to him was going on to Annals of Castle Black and checking qualification ratios. And Tyrell has consistently had a positive qualification ratio the last few months, which we found interesting. The only other thing that had
Since
it,
the restricted list?
yes.
Interesting.
Yes, that exactly. That's very interesting. The only other three were Targaryen, Stark, and Greyjoy.
I don't think it's that interesting. Tyrell cards are still super good. They just had to figure out new builds. They're just not busted with Mace. Like
exactly, but
they still have insane cards.
We pegged them as the house we wanted if we didn't get top 3.
Yep,
basically.
And I think you remember Sid's opening nomination was actually Terrell. And we thought there was a good chance that nobody would actually be hot for Terrell, and that there was a chance that we would be able to sneak it out at $9 or $10. And that didn't happen.
I think so. Up until probably 3 days before the draft, Tyrell was the main house we were going for.
Oh,
we didn't think we could afford the top 3. And I did a lot of like the same stuff that you did. I broke down the numbers for a lot of stuff. And then after playing Kyburns over the weekend, I just felt Tyrell wasn't good enough. So I just was like, let's get a couple Wausau boys and just buy Stark.
Yeah.
But I still think, I mean, like, I'm very excited and scared to see what Neil Kimball does with Tyrell, just because he's so good in this format.
Yes. When putting it up, we said no one is going to bid on this except if Neil has a plan for this, and he did.
I don't think Neil laser focuses onto something, though. I think Neil has kind of like his values.
Yes.
And then he will kind of go to where he thinks there's profit, and then he will stop, and it just it stopped right there at 15 for him.
We pegged him as being the person that might have the same opinions as us. Sure.
Plus, has a lot of faith in his friends.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think he had it on his mind to necessarily get Night's Watch last year, but it worked out for him.
It's where the value was, and that's Neil's strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think also the main thing also we were thinking about was, I mean, listen, last year Stark was terrible. I mean, and the fear is in Thrones War is in a sense, you can lose this game in the auction. Stark was so bad last year, you couldn't make up for how bad it was, I think.
I'm curious of people's opinions because I have my own. Was Stark worse last year versus Bear this year?
Yes.
Stark was worse last year versus Bear this year?
Yes.
I think so. I think so, but that's just my opinion.
Chime in here, please.
I agree with you, Buzz, for sure. But I'm a Bear whore, so like my opinion does not count.
I think Stark last year, like, it was just an incredibly frustrating house.
But do you think what do you think is worse? Stark in the meta?
Stark because of matchups. Barra still has good matchups. Stark just didn't have. Stark had like a few 55 matchups, right? But like Stark didn't have any just good matchups, and Barra just has some good matchups.
Sure, agreed. Schoenthal as a Barra player this year. What's your opinion, buddy?
Declined to state.
Okay, cool. Roy, do you have an opinion?
We think things have compressed a bit, right? I mean, things are more competitive.
Maybe.
So I think the power creep is real for all the factions that aren't playing yellow and red cards. But I think, and I mean this with great love to Johnny Wright, I don't think that the team was built in a way to take advantage of where Stark was last year. So I just think the dynamics of their team and where it just ended up, like on a deck building level, I'm not talking about personal level or anything like that, but just on a deck building level, I don't think that they really sought to abuse the angles where Stark was strong, and that kind of handicapped them a little bit. So I would say they're actually relatively close to where they'd be, and I think if Team Barra plays to Barra's strengths, that they'll be fine. Like there's a lot of variance in the war format, and I think Barra could end up surprising people if the team tries to come in consciously and build its lineup in a way to get the wins where it can, to make up for where it's going to have to eat some losses.
Yep.
Well, I think the thing we were, especially after what happened last year with Stark, I think most everybody went into this saying, I don't want Barra. or if you did want Bear at a buck, you needed to be able to price enforce everybody else to make it worth it. And I think, what we saw and why Night's Watch is 23 is like, obviously nobody thinks that Night's Watch is actually 23. It's just the thing we feared was going to happen happened. And there's a death match at the end where, what are you going to do? I think they probably should have pulled out a little bit earlier on that, so it worked out pretty well for James. But I guess Johnny could say, what else am I going to spend my money on at this point? Most of what you would really want to spend your money on was gone, or at least a lot of money on was gone at that point.
That was like the most entertaining part of the draft for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real reason, like, so I feel like Jesse and I overpaid for Stark. Well, that's not true. We overpaid for the faction that we ended up with. And we basically did that because we didn't want to get bullied by Johnny and James into getting Barra.
I disagree, but
that's my take. But
I think we overpaid for it based on what you spent on me.
Yes. Well, I mean,
that's
for
the
our
overpaid
draft,
part. I don't think Stark was overpaid for. I think Stark is worth $25.
Well, I agree with that, but when we get into if we want to talk about generally like how my draft went later or whatever, but like I was significantly handicapped by Sid making me pay so much money for you. And that like shapes fundamentally a lot of the choices that I made during the draft for better, mostly for the better, and a few spots where I think I could have optimized things a little bit better. But
sure, I mean, there were times where I think we got steals, but
hard agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stark at 25 is fine, especially Roy, because you were getting close to that Barrett death match, and I thought that James and Johnny should have, like everybody's scrotum should start to get a little tight there as you got closer and closer to Barra.
I think Roy had to, because if we got into the Barra death match, my opinion would have been heard. I would have just been like, let's take Barra, baby.
We would have had to take Barra because there's literally we just bid up to our money, and then the other player could have bullied us into getting.
I don't think I would have went over like 15 for Night's Watch.
But that, in any case, that's what happened.
Yeah.
What disappeared? Yeah, that's not right. Anyway, the point of what that graphic is supposed to be is that we spent 16% of our budget on houses this year versus 10% last year. So regions have responded by placing a lot more emphasis on houses. Some of that is the Night's Watch bloat, but in general, I think, at 10% last year, that was way too little.
So do you think the 16% is closer to where it should be?
Oh, it's because you did that weird animation buzz. That's
so
what happened.
that's 100% because it's
no. You did not add the animation to your thing that you added after I fixed it.
All right, who cares about the animation? So I think the 100%
it looks great on stream
is the fact that we play War 2 times to 3 times a year now, and regions have a better sense of what the Thrones War meta is, like the War format meta is, than I think at any other point in that. And I think that what the 2018 War format global meta proved is that your faction choice, as I said earlier today, you can really lose drafts or lose the tournament in the draft. And I think a lot of that has to do with factions. And people are much, much more cognizant of that, which if War was truly only an annual event, I don't think people would be as cognizant of that as they are now.
So
I also feel that leads to like, what were we going to say later?
I think the factions were still like fairly underpriced. I think that like if you can get an active player base, and a lot of the problem with dollar players, and speaking from my own experience at Roy's thing, I think a lot of dollar players can be good as long as you can get them to practice. Like, I think the real problem with getting cheap players in this format is that you'll often end up with players that are hard to find, hard to talk to, hard to get active. As long as you can get them active, I don't think it's actually a problem, and that, I think, makes the faction value significantly more. Because, like, there's certain factions where you can just play 1 or 2 builds and be like, shrug.
The issue with that, I believe, is like it's become such a global event that I think it's really hard to sit down with people. I mean, like the Iron Throne is just not good enough, in my opinion, to train people. Like, it's just not. Like, sitting down with, like, I believe that when your team is mostly together, I think it's very, very beneficial.
I mean, I've never had that, so I'll just take your word for it.
Hard disagree.
Well,
No,
Buzz, we can't all be as good as you, dog.
No. I just think
You-
that you function way differently socially. For me, it's better sitting on a Skype call, spectating someone. I have more information, and we can do it quicker. It works great for me. While face to face wouldn't work for me. One, I'm in Sweden, but otherwise as well. So I definitely think there are people like probably more Midwestern people, CT and you, function better when they are.
I definitely function better when I can sit down with people and like work with them and like sit through lines with them and things like that. But okay, I mean that's cool.
So I mean, you know that, and you take advantage of it by drafting people that you can sit with, right? Yeah.
Agreed, 100%.
I draft differently because I don't really care.
Correct. I mean, being in Sweden, you can't care, right?
Right. Yes.
Well, what was your point about Iron Throne, though, Jesse? I mean, I know that, like, as a relatively low rep player myself, Iron Throne is dangerous because it's automating the things that I need to be doing in person. So when I get in person, I'm missing my Tyrion triggers and I'm missing my windows and that kind of thing. But that didn't sound like what you were talking about.
No, absolutely. That's what I'm talking. So, like, most of the decks I build have a ton of triggers in them, whether they're passive power or I just like a lot of cards with a ton of triggers. And I just feel that like when you're working with players who don't get to play very much, when they're just automating action phases, I think it's tough on them to then sit down with paper cards and be like, break down every action window. And like, I feel that like I talk to them after the games. Like last year when I would talk to them after the games, you know, or even at Thrones Soberfest when I would talk to some of my players after the games, they'd be like, oh, I missed this trigger. And it's like, that's fine. I mean, like, it's not a big deal. Like everyone misses triggers, but I think that's a really big. I mean, I think it's like a big deal. I think it's like you find that a lot more people who play on the Iron Throne a lot versus people who don't.
So I don't know how true that is. Like, I think it's
that's just been in my experience. It might not be true at all.
Well, in the chat, it suggests that like that I'm trying to look at both things at once. So sorry, chat. But like, it suggests that voice calls on the Iron Throne will really help. Like, I don't think just grinding games on the Iron Throne is the same, unless you've played a bajillion games and just don't miss triggers anymore as a general rule. But like, if you're talking them through it as they play it, like the triggers are much less likely to be missed, and I think it's a much more positive overall experience.
I do 100% think that it's amazing we have something like the Iron Throne. And like people obviously learn differently and play differently. Like if I play, and like people who've went to tournaments with me know this. Oh, sorry, brother. If I only play on the Iron Throne for a week leading up to a tournament, like I'm not gonna do well. Like I'm just not. It just makes me lazy. It makes me distracted, and I don't feel anything. But if I play with paper, I usually do pretty well. But
yeah. So what I do, I test the decks a few times on the Iron Throne before going to a tournament. What I really make a point of is even if I play against myself solitaire, just going through the rounds, I take the cards in my hand before the tournament and play just to feel it out, get a feel for it, get a feel for the cards and the triggers. So for any regions that wants free advice, force your players to play a few games face to face before the tournament, maybe the day before. Just talk them through stuff.
It is a way to get a lot of reps, though.
It's a way to get a lot of reps.
Yeah.
And the thing I always tell people, both my people on my team, well, on both my Thronesword team and my actual team, and players who ask me, is the Iron Throne is a really good way to learn like how your deck works and what interactions it's looking for. It's not always the best way to like figure out, unless you're like an Aaron Glazer level grinder with it. You know, Glazer's in like the top 5% of people who play on the Iron Throne in like just sheer number of games played.
True, if you looked at the stats last year.
I know, I'm just teasing, but you do play a lot on Iron Throne, Glazer.
Sure, but 4,000 games in a year is just like, I'm not playing 12 games a day.
But you are on the run up to Gen Con. But is that it's going to give you bad data because it does make you lazy. And this is always mean to say, but the Iron Throne meta is garbage. So when you're playing randos on Iron Throne, like this is where you get the people with long Facebook threads about how their deck, they played 75 games with their deck and their deck has never lost a game on Iron Throne and it's the best deck in the entire world situation. And that's where you go down the Iron Throne rabbit hole. And that's a really, really big trap for a lot of players who are on the rise, I think, is that they can get some wins on Iron Throne and they're like, this is the real thing. And then they go to a paper tournament and they get their butt kicked because one, they've been lazy because they don't know how to do the timing in real life and they don't have to play against more refined decks than what you see on the Iron Throne. I think
100% you're correct. I think if you use Iron Throne as a tool to hone your own decks, learn them, get the reps in, and just like kind of learn what people are playing, that's great. But if you're like actually taking those statistics like they matter, I believe it's wrong.
You should trust the statistics if you're losing on the Iron Throne. If you're losing on the Iron Throne, that tells you something.
Sure,
that's a very interesting dichotomy.
Yep.
But,
okay.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really fair point. That if your deck is bad, it's always bad, but it can be good against only a certain slice of the population in terms of both metagame and player skill.
No one in second edition knows how to play against control, apparently, in Iron Throne or in person, so that's nice.
All right,
in North America.
Move on to the next slide in Trey's show. What's going on?
Okay, so we can kind of blow past this, but if you're curious, like how I came up with the actual dollar values, some of this was the survey, and so like the main question that this slide should pose is, how much does faction actually count? We did a survey, and we asked people, what do you think your normal, like just playing an average faction in a Thrones War tournament, what would your record be? And then, what would it be if you're playing your best faction? What do you think it would be playing your worst faction? And we actually got rather extreme responses to this, where people were saying, if I'm normally, a 4.5 win player, I'd probably be 6-1 with the best, deck, and I dropped to 3.5 or 2 wins with the worst. I thought that was pretty extreme, and so the guess here is if you say Targ's the best, I'm saying that's worth about half a game per player. That's what that means when you see wins per player. If you took your average player who's going to win 3.5 games in a 7, in the 7 rounds, that'll take that 3.5 game player and make them a 4-3 player. And kind of on the downside, not that we pegged it, but I did peg Targ to half a win benefit. Then it worked out the W.A.R was almost exactly the opposite in the other direction. So, when Aaron earlier said he thinks the numbers are still low, it's entirely possible that factions count for more than this. They count for more than half a game. And if that's the case, then these values probably should still be even larger. And I would say that's maybe the upside for the top 3 factions this year, is that in a sense they were still underpaid for because of what they can do for your team. And I would certainly make the argument that with Targ, that was some of the thought of like, you can give Targ to any player, and you can still count on a certain baseline of wins, or they're fairly straightforward to play. We'll see if that's actually the case. You guys have any thoughts about like whether half a game difference between an average faction and a top faction, does that sound right? Does that pass the sniff test?
It's so dependent on players. It's so dependent on players. Like, there's people that just can't play certain factions. Like, and I don't know that people are especially good at predicting what factions they're good and bad at, I think, is the other part. I think
we also have people as an average.
Yeah.
But Aaron's point is fair. Like, people are notoriously bad about predicting their own skills in general. Having been a regent before, one of the most amusing parts at looking at the answers to the player surveys is the win percentage column, where everybody says they're about a
60%.
60 to 75% player. So there's
They're
some
all
there's some 20% of
Reduke
players
level
out there
card
that
players.
have never been to a war event and have never won a game against anyone who has been to a war event, or else people are very bad at these predictions. And I think Aaron's point further is one that leads back into what you said before about the $1 players, where there's certain factions that treat those players a lot better than others.
Mhm.
So,
But Chris, I
that's-
think you may be, in a sense, I think you may be wrong on. I mean, it is. I've seen how people estimate what they are, but the Thrones War group is a pretty skilled group. That's certainly a more skilled group than Iron Throne, and we were just talking about how bad Iron Throne is. So if that number of if somebody says they win 65% of their games on Iron Throne, that's entirely possible for an average or even a below average person that goes to Thrones War.
Sure. I think a lot
Yeah,
of people. I also think a lot of those numbers, I think if you just play a game enough, I think a lot of people just always estimate. You remember your wins over your losses usually, on the Iron Throne. Just honestly, and I think a lot of people are oh, I'm 60 to 65%.
Yeah.
And in tournaments, to be a 60 to 70% win player, you have to be pretty good.
In tournaments, 60
Strats
would be
doesn't
huge.
have that kind of win rate.
There's stuff that's look who's dancing.
almost-
I know
if
the
you
win
look
percentages. We went through the Jousting Pavilion and noted down every single win percent of every single player, and that we weighed that in.
So did
I mean, yeah, I did that as well for sure.
Yeah. It was super useful.
I did actually, though. I'm not on the
I
team.
100% agree. I mean, I think there were some we weren't able to bid on some of those players, but I think there were some teams that just got absolute steals.
Oh yeah.
Nick, I'm still annoyed that he went for 19.
Nick is better than I am.
Nick is better than I am by far.
I mean,
He went to Team
he's
Martell,
literally
that he
better than
won
every
with last
other.
year.
Yeah, he's literally better than every other player in the draft at War, based on performance at War tournaments.
except for how he did at Jesse's tournament.
I mean,
It was a rough
Pretty
day.
good track record, but small sample size.
But I think there's a lot of the problem with the draft is the draft, particularly this year. I feel like, and comparing to Jesse's draft and even my infamous draft, I actually think there was a lot more variance and a lot of sort of weird things that went on, like how much players went for. So it's, I think, really difficult to identify, I think, out of this one, the honest amount that people were paid for. And not because of collusion, but because, Matt Gaiman going for $1 kind of thing, but just simply because people were trying to target other regents to get them to overpay for people. And that, I think, skews the quote-unquote, mathematically true value.
I think that's what
certain
happens,
things.
right? Because
Sometimes.
so there's been so many of these formats that there's just not that many hidden values on players anymore. I think just most players are known.
yeah,
Most players known, but also people start to price enforce when they
Agreed.
haven't at all before.
I 100% agree with you, but I think a large portion of players are now known where there's not as many steals on the draft anymore. So I think you're actually playing against the other kings in the draft. You actually have to win the draft now, to where maybe in the past you didn't have to. And the only steals now are dollar local
Neil
players.
won the draft last year, though. I mean,
Sure.
I think Neil's success can definitely be traced to the draft. I think what you're saying, though, is that actually, as a group, the regents are far more competitive now. Everybody, the tide has risen, and everybody's doing a pretty good job now, so that there aren't huge discrepancies in values, and players are we can quibble about values, and especially personally, I've felt that the top players did not go for enough money. I thought it was weird that regents were backing off on the 10 best players that were available on the value of Nick and Chris, that James got Chris at such a what I consider to be a low number, but it was across the board. Nobody paid for top value, and I get it, but I think that might have been a little bit of a mistake, and I think we would see a little bit of a correction next year, or I'm wrong. We'll see.
Not like that, or not, or just not.
Well, I'll call my shot here. All right, so Buzz, let's go one more slide so just so we're kind of reorienting ourselves here. So the average team at Thrones War is going to win 42 games, a little over 42 games. That's the 339 wins divided by the 8 teams we have. We can probably skip this one, but if you're curious, this is the results from last year. So speaking about like what the top players should go for. This on the Y column is what people went for in last year's auction and how many wins they got. And I guess the takeaway from this, especially because the dollar values are a little bit different this year because our budgets are smaller, but the takeaway should be that the players who Regent spent $20 or more on actually performed incredibly well or incredibly consistently. It looks like, oh, wait a second, Trey, there's 2 players who had 4 wins and 1 player only had 3 wins of the people that went for over $20. But I can tell you that those people that got the 4 wins, they made the cut. Actually, they just lost in the cut. And the one $3 player, that was a Stark player. And Stark was really, really bad last year. So, and it also points out just how great Sam Bratz's performance was last year with Stark. And it was so out of line with the way the rest of the team did that there was some special voodoo going on there. All right, so what this next one is, again, we're kind of looking back at 2018 and just some of the weirdness that came out of it. If our average player wins 3.5 games, what actually happened last year was that a lot more people only won 3 games or less than more than 4. And so what this means is that the top players are actually winning even more games than you think they should. They're essentially stealing what a normal distribution would be here. The top players are stealing any more. So this is all a way of saying that your best players in this game are extremely bankable, and so you should be willing to pay more for them. Just going with my thesis that the top players should be going for more than what they actually did for this year, and that is reflected in the drafting that we did. In the end, when you look at who goes deep in the cuts in these events, nobody's there who's a big surprise. In fact, if we go back to this one here, you see of the players that went for less than $7, like there's only one player less than $9 who got more than 5 wins. So you can have profit with the lower priced players, but they're not going deep into the tournament. All right, so based upon what actually happened this year, and based upon Sid and Buzz's, or based on Sid and Buzz's, or Buzz's and Sid's actual player projections here, this is what our spreadsheet says on how well the teams did.
Rip Team Stark.
Who put in the Sid Vicious picture?
I'm to blame.
I love Sid Vicious.
So this is reflective of Sid and Buzz's view of
what
of
the
players.
fuck?
Wait, take it easy, Jesse. Wait. You'll see.
It's horse shit.
I'm choosing not to comment.
So this is just what the spreadsheet says, Roy and Jesse, and I think you're right to actually take offense here.
Fuck. If
Checks
we
in
get
the mail.
Yeah, go ahead and prove me wrong now. So one of the things I thought was really surprising though was that Martell wasn't in the top 3, because I think that I would say certainly Martell passes the eyeball test. When you look at that team, you kind of say, oh, that's a lot of really good players, and it's a lot of really good players matched up with the faction that's going to reward those players too. And so when it comes to like how personally I think things are doing, this is, we can get to, my actual predictions based on kind of those numbers.
Nice gift, by the way, Trey.
Yeah, isn't Kugels a lovely thing?
All
right.
Did you guys get that Jim says we should read some of these stats because eventually this will be a podcast? And
Yeah,
people will be
I've got
confused.
a solution. To that. Don't worry about it.
We will share a PDF for them to follow along.
Yeah, and I'll just link to the video and say, look, for this episode, you probably prefer to watch the video. If you don't, then you don't. But just keep going.
Yeah, well, we can get to this. So here's my actual predictions. I thought Dustin had a great draft and will probably be in the top 3. I think Martell passes the eyeball test. I think they got a lot of really good players that are going to be able to take advantage of Martell. And then surprisingly, I picked Targaryen to win it all there. So we'll see how that works. I think Targ clearly pursued a kind of high-low strategy, and the reason I think they did well is they've got a good six or seven people that easily make the cut, especially playing Targ, and then their last $17 or whatever they spent, I think they spent their last $17 really well. And again, this will just come down to who you think is good. That you can get for $1 or $2 a lot of times, but I thought that at least based on what we thought were good matchups with Targ did a good job of filling in after having spent a lot of money early on in the draft. So that's it. That's what I got, and there probably should be some bets about drinks now. Sandy's not here.
I was super impressed until the last 2 slides. Very impressed.
So what you have to take in mind is that all of these numbers are based on mine and Sid's evaluation of the players. If you drafted a player that we said, this guy is horseshit, then you get minus points.
Oh. We have 3 Wausau and Rabs. Weird.
Well, I guess if one of Neil's big successes last year was that he definitely got the deepest team, right?
Yeah.
He both put together a bunch of generally LA people that he knew he could get reps with, and he also was the first to fill out his team, buying quality people kind of all the way down and avoiding taking any chances on people that he didn't know, people that could harm the team, people that were at risk of going 0-7.
And then they all also wanted to win, so they were all willing to play builders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a big thing for their team, right? Like, all their good players played builders, except like Matt Bruce played Night's Watch Wolf and made the cut with it as well.
Yeah, and he kind of did the same thing this year. It's just a question of, I think, as a group, the Regents were more savvy, and just kind of, there weren't huge steals other than I feel like at the top. So we shall see.
I mean, moving in, in a purely analytical mode, I do think that your predictions that these top, no one will be surprised if these, maybe not specifically this order, it could be Martell wins, Targaryen second, Greyjoy's third, some other events. I think no one, including the Regents who are not on these 2 teams, would be surprised to see this as the top 3 houses. Both, I think all 3 of these players had good, all these 3 Regents had good drafts. But I actually think Alejandro had the best draft overall. I think once he got locked into Martell, I think he understood what he needed to do to get the most out of that faction. and really drafted incredibly well for it and kept his. I think he kind of ran into the very end where he didn't have a lot of good choices among the dollar players because he and I were both fighting at the end for like the people at the end, and it was just a little bit chaotic at the end, as Chris, who did the commentary, can verify. But I think overall he did a really good job. I think the thing that's really difficult to qualify, and this is speaking for me, is how much also the hands skewed this a little bit, because basically you were taxing players, and of course some people got more value and then other people didn't. And we're talking about just pure dollars here, like
Right.
budget availability. And that I think really impacted my draft because, again, I'm going to go after Sid every episode for making me pay a ridiculous sum for Jesse because he knew that I would. And then fate also allowed him to not be punished by getting good value for Buzz. So Jesse and I came in with having paid, what did I pay for you? $29, Jesse?
Yes.
$29, yeah.
Drink, dog.
And I think that with that constraint, we ended up in a really good place. I'm really happy with my team, and I think that we got some really good value, and I'm really surprised that we were able to get Rabs for how much that we did. And I actually think we got a good pick of the $1 people as well.
We got a steal on Bohan as well.
Sort of. I
I
think we overpaid for Bohan, not out of Bohan's skill, but out of, I think, the demand for Bohan in the draft. I think we overpaid.
I think he's worth it.
I think he is too, but
I think Platt's probably worth it too.
I'm happy with everybody that we have on the team.
Sandy.
Very. Sandy was my first acquisition, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep, he was.
Besides
Was.
Jesse, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I think that is all I have.
Cool. Well,
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, we
Thank you so
appreciate
much,
having
Trey.
you on, Trey. Yeah, this was a lot.
Always a pleasure, Trey.
Yeah, it was cool. Thanks for doing that.
All right.
You want to do it for my tournament?
Yeah, Andrew, I definitely
I'll
should
do
have
it
you.
whether
I wanted to,
I
but they kept putting
end
you
up
up
on the
before
show
I
or not.
could.
We
Yeah.
should have Trey commentate the draft of Jesse's tournament.
You want to do it with Alex Black? He's doing it.
Sure, but
All right.
I really have nothing to say about the actual value of players. That I have no idea who's a good player is or not.
I'm
But
sure
I
Roy.
can
Can I do it
provide-
this year, Jesse?
I'm sure Buzz and Sid can fill you in on good players again.
But I don't have hot takes on who's good and bad. All right, thanks, guys.
Yep.
Take care.
All right. So does anyone else have any sort of general thoughts now that we've had our math lesson for the day? General thoughts about how the war draft went? It would probably be best, I think, if we heard from Glazer and Schoenthal a little bit here, because Chris had a bird's eye view of the whole process as an amazing commentator, but also, they're not regents, so they don't necessarily have the same emotive connection that Buzz and Jesse and I might have to it. So yeah.
Sure, I'll go. I'll go. I think that the biggest takeaway for me was something that Trey touched on a little bit, and that was kind of the depression of value at the top level of players. We saw in previous drafts I think there were more than three, at least three, maybe 4 or 5 players that went for over $25 last year. And this year, aside from hands, which I think there was maybe 2 that went for that price, there was 1 in the draft itself. So that really was something that was a big takeaway for me, was that kind of evening out of things. And I'm curious to see if that continues in future war drafts, or if that was kind of unique because of the hands and how that kind of, as you said, Roy, taxed the regents.
Glazer.
Thank you. Okay, I was like, do I go now? I think houses were underpriced. I think players were generally scattered a bit too much toward the middle, all things considered. But I don't know. I felt like some houses were really undervalued. I don't see how Martell is significantly less than a lot of these houses. I feel I just think honestly, I kind of don't like the whole hand thing. So that skewed an awful lot of this whole scenario for me. Like, I think that hands are, generally speaking, not beneficial for this format.
I think that if Ryan chooses to continue the hand program next year, I think he needs to come up with a different way of determining values and taxing people. If he wants to do hands in advance.
Yeah. What
specifically did you have an issue with? Maybe you said it while I was disconnected.
I just think that the format with hands is really awkward, and I think like it messes with the cost. And I prefer everyone going into the actual draft on more of an even playing field, because like I felt like the amount that was paid for hands like changed the strategy a lot in this format, and I'm not sure that it was in a good way.
I mean, I'm curious because like only one hand was overpaid for. Everyone else got insane value, right? Like, I mean,
and that hand that was overpaid for really brings a lot of value to the team based on their preference for shirtlessness and things like that. So,
I mean,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like the process of how to appoint the hands was perfect. I find it really interesting what Ryan did, and I think it's super cool to be able to like do draft strategy with someone pre-draft. I think that's like very vital, and I thought that was really cool. And I do think people just got some steals. So like Andres at 17, Jess at 17, Buzz, what did you go for?
21.
21.
Okay.
Oh, was it that high?
A steal. So
same as last year.
CT went for 22. Even like before he had to drop out, like Malucci was at 24. Like I just think like not having those players in the draft hurts a little bit, but I'm not sure the perfect way to figure it out. I really liked being a hand, but I don't know.
I really enjoy being in hand, but this is also my second year being one because Alex Black drafted me last year specifically because he knew I would organize everything. So if you have that in the draft instead, it also puts something interesting. Do you draft Trey because he will maybe he's a $1 player, but he organizes stuff for you. So
I mean, last year Ebri drafted me, and like I organized a lot of things. I built a lot of the decks. Like I did a lot of that stuff. Anyways, but I will tell you, like drafting strategy with someone is super interesting. Like very, very interesting.
So, like, I did that when I wasn't a king before.
Sure.
Like, I get that that's interesting, but I don't think it's different. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think
and the other thing is...
Go Sean Paul. No, you're good.
I was just going to say that I think that maybe leaving it up to the regent to decide if that's part of their strategy might just lead to a better, more natural draft than what you're talking about, where it's forced on literally everybody. You know, because that's like if I was a regent this year and the hand program was not in effect, it's still something I would aim for. Like I'd aim to get a top player early and kind of have them come alongside me and do that. I don't know how much the pre-draft preparation period like really informed things for you, and maybe it's quite a bit. But for me, I think I'm fine just kind of adding them early in the regular draft and then going from there.
I think it's also like interesting to like have a friend that you like, or even like someone you think would be super good. Like maybe someone wants Buzz to do a lot of the strategy, so they're like, Buzz, work with me, and I'll just pay whatever it takes to get you. You know, like maybe that's something. I have no idea. I think it was cool that he did the hands thing. I'm not sure if we're doing it for my tournament or not, but I find it really interesting to try something new.
Yeah, it was definitely a good innovation. I just think that as Ryan iterates on it, I think that coming up with a different selection process would probably be better. I think the other thing is like, I mean, it has the benefit of also like formalizing informal relationships, you know, like people, even if we're avoiding like people like making deals behind the scenes, but I mean, people just draw on their friend network in the preparation for the draft, right? I mean, Trey
Sure.
helped Sid and Buzz, even though Trey, I mean, didn't end up on their team. They ended up, not spending money on Trey, but he helped them because they're friends and they have a good relationship, right? Like, but it just formalized this relationships and makes it a bit more like obvious to regions who may not be as plugged in. Like, I mean, if you follow anything, you'll know that like Jesse is one of my best friends in the community, and I mean the same as like Blazer and things like that, right? Everybody on this cast, but like you may not know if you don't follow the community closely that like CT and Jim are good friends, or
they're also teammates.
And yeah, they're like, and they're teammates, or that like Andras and Dustin are really close. Like, it just says, okay, I know that these two people are working together, and it, creates this whole, makes some things more transparent for people who might not be plugged out into things outside of California. So that has an advantage built into the system, trying to be as objective as possible.
Sure.
Any other thoughts that people have?
Nope. Just want to thank Trey again for what he did. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always a pleasure when Trey can do anything around us, right?
Yeah, he's amazing. Number 1 Second Sons fan. We love him. Do we want to jump a little bit into Iowa Worlds then? If we're done with WAR. Nobody has any other WAR comments?
Just remember the number 37, Roy. That's the number we have to beat, baby.
Well.
I just like to get on record that I agree that Alejandro is the one to beat. As soon as he finishes draft, I'm like, okay, I'm scared. Yeah.
I would say that Alejandro and Jim are both incredibly scary. But those are the two houses that I am very scared of.
Well, sitting down with Lannister, no one has built Lannister in forever. Anything they cook up, you will have no clue what the fuck they're on about when you sit down.
I don't think that's
next
true. I think you need to pay attention to
different
what happened
lines,
at Thronstoberfest. I think that Jess
but I
built a good lineup.
I don't think the decks are gonna look anything like it. They're gonna have 2 crossings, and then they're gonna have a lot of weird stuff. I think even if they bring the same agendas as they did at your tournament, the decks are going to be very different, I think.
But,
got
I
a lot of tools, and the new Lanny event is going to spice up things.
Well, if they don't play 2 Klansman decks, they're not my friends anymore.
I think we'll see plenty of Klansman cards. Any other general thoughts before we jump ship over to Iowa Worlds? Okay. So first things first, we should congratulate our co-host here, who is now the reigning world champion of Iowa. Congratulations, Jesse Carpenter, on his pretty astounding victory, only losing once in the entire weekend. So congratulations, Jesse.
Thank you very much. It was fun.
I think it's important to note that every single world champion of Iowa is a second son.
Yeah.
That's right.
And a member of the Long Lances. So I just want to make it clear that both Second Sons and Long Lances own Iowa. So it's a colony now.
Lucky us owning Iowa.
Only
Iowa's
the best for you,
sweet.
Blazer. It is.
Well,
Thank
what do
you.
they use? What was the joke? What was the thing about Iowa and trash cans and dumpsters? I can't even remember. Do they even have dumpsters in Iowa? Was that something you said in a White Book episode, Glazer? I can't remember.
God, yeah, I think so. It was a long roasting of Iowa.
It was a fun event, even though like a lot of people couldn't come because of the weather. But even though like there were only 22 people, there were 4 card designs in the field. There was Nick Hansen in the field, Gen Con champion Tyler Phillips, all the Quincy guys.
Those guys are really good, by the way. Like
They are very talented.
They did really well at Minnesota Worlds as well. So,
Yes.
they did.
Worlds.
Minnesota Worlds in this context of today.
They're very good. So it was a really tough field. I mean, you had Kyle Vance on the field as well. I mean, it was just an insane field, honestly.
Yeah, and Kyle and Danny always put on an amazing event, and like they are
Yes.
like easily the best host and hostess in Thrones, probably. I'm
Yes.
sad I wasn't able to attend IO Worlds this year, but last year it was one of, or I guess 2 years technically ago, it was probably one of my favorite tournaments I attended that year. So
It was insanely fun, and I had fun playing for the most part. I don't know. I finished the tournament because Roy made me, but I wanted to scoop.
it's true.
Yeah, I played Stark Fealty. Heir to the Iron Throne should not be a card. That is not a fair card.
Facts.
I'm not-
Hashtag facts.
Yeah, I don't believe that is a fair card. Yeah, I lost to Peters, but I scooped to him. We didn't play. Every other game I played, I saw the 5th plot once, and that's only because I got king plotted for a turn. Maybe I saw the 5th plot in the final because he like barring turn 1 and 2. I just played around it. I didn't play my heir till turn 3 and turn 4. But
Shit, sorry.
Fat Cat is good.
No joke.
She is a very good card. I hear.
Yeah, I was playing like fairly tight too, like even as drunk as I was, so that helped. But yeah, it was a really good event. I'm very glad. The swag was insane. And most importantly, Sandy lost the bet. That is the most important part of the weekend. Sandy lost
yeah.
the
That
what were the
making
terms of
that
bet?
best was stupid. What?
Yes.
It
Okay.
was
You
a
needed to
really
be better
bad
than
bet.
4 Wasa players. Like, no,
right.
not better than the average Wasa player. That'd be reasonable. But no, better than all of them.
Yes. So the week before, Sandy and I were in a team tournament, and it started because I went undefeated, but we still lost the team tournament, and he was on my team, and he was like talking a little shit, and I was just like, well, being in Wausau helps me win games, I guess. Just getting my ass beat by Brad Eamon all week usually helps me win. So he bet me that he could finish higher than every Wausau boy going. I said, okay, we'll figure out the bet. We'll do it on Second Sons. We didn't have a Second Sons episode before that. So like the next week we decided it was all his idea that he wanted. He had to finish higher than all Wausau players, and if he did, then I had to stay sober during the Thrones War tournament. I could drink afterwards, but I had to stay sober during the Thrones War tournament, and I had to be his drink bitch.
Okay. What's the
But-
other side? What does he have to do?
He has to be a drink bitch for all of Wausau,
Oh.
and he has to stay sober during the tournament, which as his teammate, I'm completely okay with, actually.
I mean, in fairness, this is going to cost both you and Team Martell some wins.
Team Martell,
Yeah. Is Nick suddenly not from Wausau?
Nick will be fine. Nick will figure it
Just-
out. Does the new Varys kill people? Nick's fine. And then after Swiss, Wausau was 1, 2, 3, 4, and Sandy missed the cut, and it was over very quickly. So that was the best part of my weekend.
You've won 2 tournaments in a row, huh?
No,
Well, they
I did
didn't
not-
I
I didn't win Kyburn's.
He was
I went-
undefeated and somehow didn't win. Yeah, got it.
It's a team tournament.
Yeah, there should always be a cut.
Well, there was a cut. They just lost in those quarters.
Oh, the cut was team also, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Silly.
it's a team trios event. So,
Yeah, it was very fun.
Chris, do you have any thoughts about IO Worlds?
Not a lot more than what Jesse said. I didn't have quite the performance that he did, but it was still a good time. It was really neat getting to basically just hang out with everybody all weekend. There wasn't a lot of going all over the place, and it was mostly hanging out at Kyle and Danny's house. And like Jesse said, they're incredible hosts and very gracious and provided everything we could ever want or need the whole weekend. So thanks
played
to
some
them.
poker.
And yeah, we did. Sandy lost a lot of money at poker too, so that was fun.
I finished up.
As did I.
And Matt Jenkins, right?
So- Yeah, Matt Jenkins took most of Sandy's money, so that was cool.
I don't know if in good faith I could ever play poker with Sandy Barnabas, particularly when he's drunk.
He tried to buy a lot of pots once he got up, and it didn't work out for him. He was real drunk.
Well, I mean, again, it feels like taking money from a child at that point. But yeah, I just really want to congratulate Danny and Kyle. Their house is still amazing, right?
It's
Oh,
unbelievable.
absolutely.
Unreal.
I know that we love Kyle here on Second Sons a lot. What's next on the agenda, boys?
I don't know. We do a Greyjoy box or we can call it a night?
That's up to you guys.
I mean, Sandy wanted to do the Greyjoy box so badly. I feel like we should wait for him to be here to do it.
All right.
So I guess we just have a really, really short episode.
Yeah, I mean, we had a pretty intense episode, though. Like, Trey gave us...
It's still 1:20, though, so...
Wait, that means we started on time. There's no way we started on time.
we started almost on
let's
time.
see, 1:15 we're going at right now.
Really? Oh, that's
And our
incredible.
sign-offs
It's like
usually
a-
take about half an hour.
That's like a normal podcast length. Sorry.
I know.
Yes.
We can take a couple questions from chat if people have any questions.
I was really hoping, I was really wanting Sid to be on to make some Thrones War bets.
But we can save that for the next one.
No.
Yeah, let's.
Next episode. Next
Wait.
episode is what I mean.
We do have, I believe, 2 episodes between now and War. Is that right?
The
Yeah,
29th and the week
And then-
of...
And then we'll figure out what day
But
we're doing.
let's
the
be
week of.
completely honest. The week of a major event like this, everybody's schedule gets a little wonky.
Oh
should
yeah, I'm
just-
taking
we should
I'm
just do that,
taking
man.
Jay Plack to a Warriors game that night. So
I
Yeah.
will be
What about
driving to San Diego, so I will probably not be on the
What,
show.
what about the Monday? How's the Monday?
I could do the Monday.
sure, Monday's good.
Yeah, problem solved.
I mean, I don't
So-
know. We're too far out. It depends on what I need to do with Allah before I leave. So,
You can
live
have
scheduling.
sex- You can have
So-
sex after the podcast.
That's right. This is
Is it
an
Monday?
exciting airtime for everyone.
We have some questions. Are the rumors of Sandy
Do we?
leaving us for poker greatly exaggerated?
Yes.
I don't
He
know.
left
We'll see how he does in New Orleans this weekend. His
Is he
hotel is
playing
like
in a
right by a
poker?
casino. No, he's just playing.
He's playing a poker tournament, or is he just going
No,
to
it's
the
just
casino?
gonna go to the casino.
So he's flying to New Orleans to just go to the casino?
No, he was flying to New Orleans because he's never been.
Oh, okay.
He's just spending a weekend in New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
Best under $10 player, in my opinion, is Rabs.
I don't know who went for under $10.
Oh.
So I don't have that
Perhaps-
list.
Let's
Up.
see.
Wait, can we do all of those like as prop bets for the episode before War?
Sure.
Because that seems more fun. Like
Yeah.
we'll prop bet.
So let's note down.
Yeah, go ahead and if you're in chat right now and has some cool suggestions for bets, go ahead and send them to us on Facebook or hit us up in the various methods that you're accustomed to, and we'll do all those on the air in the future.
And exclude me, because I
Did
won't
we-
do any.
Did we ever figure out our prop bets from Worlds? Because I think Sid was supposed to do that, and then he never
Sid
did.
did, and then I don't think we just didn't do it in an episode.
That's
Why are
pretty
you not
creative.
doing bets, right?
I don't do these kind of bets. 2, there's 0% chance I'll do them about Thrones War, where I'm in charge of a team. Like
Well,
I've got
just-
enough
just
pressure
don't
and
bet on your
anxiety
own
on me,
team.
Buzz. I don't need to. Add,
We're not doing it for drink stuff. No way.
so,
Who says?
I say.
You guys
Okay,
are
I'm
horses.
I'm out if we're doing drinks. Damn.
Me,
We can do
me-
it for. We
It'll
can
be
do
me
it for
versus,
whatever.
It'll be me versus Chris versus Sandy for drinks. It's fine.
Wait, why can't I play?
All right, you can play. That sounds good for my team.
I don't care. I play the same whether I'm drunk or not.
It is true.
I
Oh,
I
and
think that's
Sid would like us
70%.
to tell. Sid says he's very in. So
Yeah, sure he is. He says that every episode, and then the day of the episode comes up, and he's like, the state's just not good for me, guys. Maybe in 2 weeks or like after War or something. I don't know if I can make it. I'm
That's a
trying,
good
guys.
Sid impression. I love it.
Every time.
Top $1 player, eh?
I mean, I don't know. We're saving this for the prop bet episode.
The Matt Gaiman Award. That could be the Matt Gaiman Award.
I like that.
top
Can we
$1
get a
player.
trophy with Matt
No.
on top of it?
No, that's bullshit. Because there was that Greyjoy dude who made it to the freaking like Final Four as a $1 player.
And Stefan made the cut last year
Yes,
as the $1
absolutely.
player.
And then there's the like 0 cost player that won the tournament at Roy's. Let's not forget that.
He was a $1 player technically. He replaced a $1 player.
Replacing a $1 player, the $1 was spent on someone else. He was a $0 player who won the tournament.
Yep.
So
times.
Sid, I think it's time for Sid to start the SoCal Thrones podcast. He prioritizes everything in his life over us. Everything.
I'm sure.
This is why his fucking home is always nearly on fire.
Any other questions from chat?
It's really just Sid and someone named Dr. Horrible and Jimmy.
That's John Peters.
Oh, is it?
Is that Peters?
Yeah, that's why he's calling people cowards.
Yeah, that
Is
makes
that
sense.
a Peters line? I don't know.
It's a Wausau line.
It's a Wausau line.
Fucking
Peters-
cowards. Oh,
Right, Roy, wrap
We
us.
love you, Andrew.
No one's asking questions. Just wrap us. Oh, Andrew's
right.
back.
they won't let me take my shirt off.
We're
No,
not
Twitch
getting
will-
reported. Buzz is affiliate. One day he dreams of being partner and can leave
What?
this world, this cruel world behind and join all the cool kids with his Twitch hoodie. But
I need to
He will not
stream
give-
like 5 hours per day for like 3 months to get to be partnered. Like, no way.
he don't stop now. I finally have time. Sorry, Sid. Like you should have been here when we were doing all the content.
Or just on the episode, like a
Or
normal
just on the episode. You know.
I mean, he was the first non-host added, right? Like
He
the very
was.
first
He was
person
here in the
randomly
50th
added to
episode.
the podcast.
This is a good question. So, does anyone have any Second Sons trivia or behind the scenes questions that they have for us? Because this is again our 50th episode. I can't believe we've been doing this that long. So,
I mean, I think we should just do the Greyjoy box. I'm not even slightly tired, but whatever.
I mean, I got time. I'll get
I'm
another.
more
We're gonna
than
talk.
I'm more than slightly hungry, so
All right, you don't get to eat dinner and stuff before this. Yeah, see, Chris puts us ahead of things. That's why he's a Lance and Sid is a whatever stupid group he's in.
Jank Tank.
Jank Tank, right?
I
I don't want to
I
shit
would-
take
would
Jank
love to
because
be
I
in the
love
Jank
it.
Tank.
They're the only other build group I like.
You mean the content that predicts time? Yeah. Well, you know, when you have your analyst in the can for your team, it's very easy to be number one. Sounds like ESPN.
His team is number one. He's still number two.
Oh, so mean. Glazer just with the knife, like, oof, you just shanked him.
Just
Red.
I love you, Jesse.
Fuck.
all right.
I like that Roy doesn't want to go to bed, so he's just refusing to sign us off. We're just
Well,
gonna
many
keep
people want to do that. I mean, like I've at least budgeted another 5 minutes. So Al is already asleep. So
Yep.
Yeah, man.
I pushed through my exhaustion from my.
I've still got
horrible
another
first day.
16-ounce hams, boys.
So,
Oh no.
turns out I have a meta here in CT, so that's cool. Andrew's got a meta.
Fuck yeah.
All right.
Metas are
Andrew.
the best.
Meta's overrated.
All right, here we go. Since we're on the 50th episode, what is your favorite Second Sons memory? Co-hosts. We'll start with Jesse because he's the newest one.
Favorite Second Sons memory.
Episode?
Didn't we do this like what, at the end of the
Yes,
year?
I was
last
about
year?
to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
didn't we do it? But it was for the year. I'm talking about the entire podcast.
Yeah, but the
history
answer's
of
the
the
same.
podcast.
Yeah, it's probably the same.
I have a different one because I have a couple.
Okay,
Huh.
Well, tell us what yours are then, Roy.
Well,
Yeah,
one
you start us up.
was the first episode of Second Sons which is a 3-hour review of the Stark box featuring myself, Buzz, and Glazer, and Dark Naj, that like everyone hated by the end of it. Like, and everyone wanted to stop, but we just didn't. We just kept going and going and going and going. It was really glorious. Like, and then we did more episodes. I still don't know how that. Well, John did unceremoniously quit in the second episode.
Like in the middle of it?
No, afterwards. He was like, "I'm not doing this again after the episode."
What a Dark Nose thing to do.
And then
Yeah, it really is.
probably my second favorite episode of Second Sons is the one after there was the Chris 1 Gen Con where I had to go into the bathroom because I was being too loud because we were all really drunk and talking about the meta and yelling. I was keeping Al up and she had a meeting in the morning and we were at my apartment in New York. Seth had to move into the closet of his apartment. And
I remember that.
Yeah.
Those were some really, really good memories that I always think. When I think of Second Sons and what is Second Sons to me, it's definitely those. Oh, and then of course the very first meta review episode. That one was,
Man, I pissed everyone off so much.
That was actually one of my favorite episodes because I truthfully believe we would not have talked as much as we do, Roy, if I would not have gotten upset by that episode.
That was so great. Everyone was so mad.
That's interesting. Why?
Because that was like the first time I'd ever personal messaged you.
Oh, was it about that? Okay.
Yep, it was.
Okay.
I read the message the other day.
Was I nice? I don't remember.
Nope. You told me to win somewhere out of the Midwest. That's exactly what you told me.
That's fantastic.
I must
Almost
have been
bigger.
particularly grumpy that day.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was like, God damn.
You were probably the 50th person to message him about it.
Yes, that's probably what it was, to be honest. Oh, no, maybe it was after CT yelled at me. It could be that. I was very grumpy.
Oh, I don't know.
Beautiful.
Did CT yell at you? Didn't you rank him as the best player in the Midwest?
Yeah, but I said the Midwest sucked.
Oh.
Rip.
When are we doing that episode?
We've never been able to get a European on. So, besides Buzz.
Buzz is on every episode.
Right, but Buzz doesn't travel Europe like he used to. So he doesn't know everybody anymore.
I
We
mean,
need
just
one more
make-
European.
Just make Wama stay up. Wama never freaking sleeps anyway. If you message Wama at like 4 a.m. British time, he's like, "Hi, sorry, I'm sleeping, but I'll answer all your Thrones questions right now." It's like, what? Just go back to bed.
Now I'm building a team around Midwesterners. What? My team is...
No.
Jesse's the only Midwesterner, right? Oh, we're talking about it, Thrones War.
Matt Clemens, I guess.
Clemens, yeah.
I love Clemens.
I
The
mean,
Lances is still the East Coast conspiracy,
Yeah.
mostly.
yep.
We've got 2 West Coasters, right? We've got 2 West Coasters, 2 Germans, and 2 Midwesterners.
And then
Yeah,
a
like-
pack of Canadians.
We have like
and-
75 people.
and a couple random Brits. You should not let me go to Europe. I will find more people to join.
Oh my God, we're gonna get so many messages.
People
Oh,
ask.
you mean Stark?
people
Yeah,
ask if
Stark is built around Wausau. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's just like, I did most of like the evaluations on players. And
He's
then
just like, Wausau's broken. Take all
These
those
Warsaw
guys.
players seem good.
I think also like the more I can sit down with players and play with them, the more value I bring. And like,
Yes, he's going to train Wausau to play Thrones. You heard it here first, guys.
no, I just mean like we can get in games together. Like, I mean, we're all good.
No, I think he drafted Warsaw to make sure that they trained him to make up for that $29.
Correct.
Okay. You want to know the
Yeah.
real reason I drafted Wausau? Because here I had 2 plans. There was the Wausau plan and the Super Friends plan. If the other regions put my 2 best friends that were still in the draft that I could draft, Glazer and Schoenthal, up early, I was going to go with the Wausau plan. But if they didn't do that, I was going to try to get Glazer and Schoenthal in an affordable, me not spending my thing. But instead, you guys, to try to bait me into spending money, threw Glazer and Schoenthal up, particularly Glazer, up like 3rd. I was like, come on. Like Glazer shouldn't be going up third. I was like, okay, well, I guess we're going the Wausau plan then.
I'm
Because
gonna
I'm
be
not spending
completely
$21
honest.
on Glazer as my third,
I
my
am
second.
I am
thing.
at least $4 overpriced.
Well,
At
you
least.
you also did not bid more than 17 on Chris. So
Yeah. I know. Because I was like, the plan's not going to work. So I need to save money to do execute plan number 2.
Even before I moved to Wausau, if you look at my war strategies in every draft I've ever been a part of, I've always pushed for Wausau players to be on my team. So
Yeah, but who got the best Wausau players at your event besides Kid?
you did. I spent a pretty penny on old kiddo.
Kid's a great player, but you didn't get Stark.
Thank God he played Bear Brotherhood. Oh man. I got Stallsburg.
You did. Chase is good. He was your one that made the cut, right?
He was the one that made the cut.
Playing a wall deck.
He played Night's Watch stack. You are correct. Or he played Bear Watch. Bear Watch.
Yeah, Bear Watch.
We had several 4 and 3s. I went 4 and 3. Bohan went 4 and 3, and Kid went 4 and 3. I was playing the HRD Dragonstone Castle, just offensively dueling motherfuckers.
So silly.
Does anybody else have any good Second Sons members they want to share?
Duel is finally good. That's a cool thing to know, right?
Oh, that's weird. Duel's been good since I've played the game.
Yes. Thank you, Jesse.
You know who Dark Nodge doesn't agree with you, and like
that's because his iteration originally was better than what it is. But,
it was so good.
But we have to deal with the card we're given, and it is a good card.
We shouldn't.
It has
an auto include in melee.
Yes.
We don't want to pull a Sandy Barnabas.
We'll just pull a Sandy Barnabas.
Did you not watch, participate, or listen in the last episode?
Of course.
I don't remember the last episode.
Well, go back and listen to it.
Why? What happened? Tell me.
No, I'm not going to tell you. Yeah,
I'm never.
So does anyone else have any other good Second Sons memories?
I mean, mine's not any different than it was last time. The live episode was great at WAR last year.
Yes, that was very good.
It was a great ass time.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
We're doing
my answer last time was, the only time we've all been in the same place.
Wait,
everyone.
Hey, let's
have
see
a microphone this year for the live episode.
Let's see if Sid can find a way to ditch us for that again.
Losing to Buzz last year was a fond memory. Just like losing from setup, like him looking at his hand, leaning over to CT and laughing. Made me feel real good.
Yep. This is on camera, wasn't it?
Yes, it was already a really bad matchup for me. There were only 2 Martel Wolf, there were more because you could have more. But I beat Martel Wolf in the cut, and then I had to play Buzz. And I was like so distraught because Martel Wolf is such a tough matchup. And the only reason I beat Martel Wolf before was because Mira put out Ariane and just let me crown her. Like, she went first, and then she played Ariane. I crowned her, and Buzz did not do that. Buzz also proceeded to have all 3 frozen solids in his hand on setup.
In my starting hand that I kept. Like, yeah, I'm keeping this. I pegged it as one of my worst matchups. But if I see Frozos, I have this easy. And then draw. Oh, and I'll keep this.
It
was a good setup as well, in addition to that.
Yes.
Is that the game that went really, really fast, and then we had to vamp on the stream for like an hour?
No, it went longer. No.
I can't remember. There was one of those games that we had.
No, I mean, because I didn't misplay, and I got like Drogo with it was just like he just whittled me down after a while. I dropped Drogo turn 1 and was able to put pressure, and I ended up having a few renown on Drogo, but then he
Martelled you.
He Varys marched me, and he got rid of him.
That's pretty bad.
It was not fun for me, especially since all my locations were fucking frozen solids.
So, do you guys have any cool jank for WAR, or are we just going to see a bunch of stuff that we expect?
We're brewing on some stuff that you have no clue about. But they've
Our,
never
our
seen
team
before.
has nothing but janks, so
Yes.
Well,
There's
but
always
I'm
some
sure.
jank. I mean, particularly with the tighter, the large group and the tighter agenda restrictions, there's just by nature going to have to be more jank.
And there's some jank in the field that was just already out there before. I mean, that I don't think people have seen yet.
Sure.
I mean,
The
there's some.
big
there's
question,
some-
I think, is what Greyjoy is doing. Are they all doing Drown God, or how many rain stacks?
No,
Are
I
they-
am convinced that they're only going to bring 2 Drown God decks. I am convinced of this.
Maybe.
I think they like. I mean, like if you look at those players, who likes Drown God there? Like Andres hates it, like despises it.
I
Really?
believe
Look.
that.
He despises it. Yes,
I don't see Dustin playing it either.
I
It's not his
think
style.
they're gonna. I think they're gonna like the big guy Greyjoy stuff.
I mean, and it's
If they do
busted.
that, I'm very happy.
I am
don't
as well.
play against Greyjoy.
It's extremely busted though. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
and-
it is. I played a practice game. I took Assault for a spin. Like, how does this deck work? And
Greyjoy Assault, I
first-
think.
no. Target.
Not Dark Assault.
Greyjoy Fealty, and he was like, okay, Scouting Vessel, Asha first turn. Okay, sure. He managed to get like 5 cards in my discard pile and like searched 3 cards, and then proceeded to do this every single round.
Yeah.
That's
mean-
pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I-
Asha's pretty good.
I had to play against the new Asha that gave like 6 other characters stealth this weekend. That was annoying.
Know what I do to that deck?
I'm
Lose.
drinking. Soda Stream is what I'm drinking, Andrew.
That's basically vodka.
I tried to
Double
get drunk with
vodka?
Andrew this weekend, but he moved away.
He's actually closer to
Ooh.
you in some ways than
Not what
by car.
I drink in the city usually, though. So
that's
that doesn't
true.
really help me.
Let's see. I'm very curious, mostly to see what
New
Martell.
Avalon.
I'm very curious to
Balon.
see what. I'm super curious to see what Martell does.
I mean, Groth is just going to steal all my decks, so like it's not like it's a big deal. Like they'll just play whatever Martell decks they took from me. It's not. It's
No, so
thing.
here's the thing: they'll play Wolf and they'll play Wars. Like, will they feel?
They're obviously playing Assault. They just played it this weekend.
Who played it this weekend?
Nick.
Oh, I mean, yeah, Nick will, but Nick. I mean,
Nick would have played.
yeah, I don't think Nick in any way cares what other
Yeah.
people are playing.
It's a worse indicator.
Sure.
If they have their $1 player grinding something, then that's a better indicator.
So it's
Nick
those
is gonna play
three.
whatever.
It's those
Sea of
three.
Blood, maybe.
Sea of Blood. It's definitely Sea of Blood. Because you
Kraken?
built the Sea of Blood deck with Wausau, so they have it.
It's a good
Those
list.
4, and then they only need 2 more, and then like HRD Starfall seems likely. Then there's just like Kraken, Fealty, but like they could just Cancer Lancer. They have no souls. They could Dragon.
I don't think there's anyone on that team who would play Martell Stag
Good.
besides Nick Hansen, and I think he likes Shadows. There's no one with the nuts enough to play that deck.
So they
I
drag.
love
I hate
I
that.
love that deck.
You
I mean,
make
look,
Jesse, you're
there's-
lucky. I love you. I hate every deck you make.
I didn't make that deck. Alex Blacken them made that deck.
Yeah. I also
You
hate
weren't
it.
even on the team then, were you?
No,
They-
they played that. They played an early iteration of that deck at Thrones War the year they won it on Johnny Wright's team.
But they did poorly with it. Well, CT
I mean-
didn't, but Alex
do you
didn't do
mean?
very well.
I mean, CT top 8'd or top 4'd, and they won the whole team event.
Yeah, but I'm talking about individually. Like, 'cause I remember talking to Alex about it. They were disappointed with how the deck did at Thrones War, and then they refined it for the rest of the year.
Sure. I mean, I think.
I could be
think,
misremembering what Alex
I
told
think
me.
Sean McCallum did well with that deck.
Did he?
Yeah, I
Sean's,
think that's right.
Yep.
Sean's one of the most underrated players in the world.
Sean's insane.
It's like
Very good player.
he's a really good. Like he's really really good all around, and no one ever mentions him.
He's super smart. He's a Lance.
Well, he
I
just
mentioned
doesn't
him a
travel
lot.
very much.
Yeah,
So-
that's it. That's a large
And
part
he's
of it.
not super active in the community, so.
I mean, he'll
He
get
did
some
do the
love
art
this
for
year.
the
Yeah, he got all the
World
art.
Tour.
Yeah.
So
You know who else is freaking amazing?
Oh, Jess bubbled with the deck as well because there were 4.
Lannister. Wait, is Jess Lannister? No, she's Bear, right? Where the hell is Jess
no,
this
she's
year?
on
She's
Neil's
Tyrell.
team.
She's Neil's
Tyrell.
hand.
Oh,
Tyrell.
Terrell. Okay. That's the team. No offense, man, because they might do great. But like, I think of least because Neil is like a blank slate to me.
He should not be. He's been a king
So-
twice and won
That's fine. I just
Been
don't
a king
know.
3. Chris, has he been in king twice or 3 times?
twice.
Who
But
is
he's
this?
won.
Neil.
Yes, I believe he's only been the king the 2 times. Well,
I thought he's won. Hasn't he won twice? And
he's
been
definitely
3
won
times?
twice. I don't recall
He's
if
undefeated.
he maybe
He's
had
undefeated.
a third regency in there.
I do not believe so.
I think it was just the twice. I think that's right.
Okay. Because he wasn't a regent the year he was on the team with us, and so I'm assuming.
Although
So
it's possible that he was offered one and turned it down one time because Ryan always makes a tradition of the winning regent always coming back. But if he's only been a regent twice and it was last year and the first year of 2E, then that means he turned it down one time.
makes sense.
He's
Neil's
also
a beast.
He's also a very good builder.
Yes.
He's the one that built that Targaryen's Mother of Dragons deck, Breaker of Chains deck that
Yep.
he did. He top 8'd Worlds with, and then Ibri top 8'd Stolic with.
Top
Neil's a
16,
beast.
right?
What's up?
Top 16, right?
Where?
The Stolic. I don't think he was 8.
Oh, I don't remember. I wasn't there. You were there, so I bet you would know. I thought we had 3 in the top 8, but you might be right.
Top 8 was Schoenthal, Malucci.
I thought it
And-
was.
Maybe there was one other American.
I thought it was.
No,
if
maybe,
no-
maybe he did make top 8. I don't know, Kyle. But anyway, he's very good. Yes,
Yes.
Neil's an excellent deck builder.
He's a beast.
Scary to have.
I mean, I don't know. He couldn't beat Bratz in the finals of that first Worlds.
It wasn't the final. It was Haynes was in the finals of the
Was
Yeah.
it Haynes? Oh,
It was
was
Haynes.
it Neil?
Yeah,
Close
he was,
top 4?
Neil was top 4. That's right.
top 4. Neil lost to Haynes, right? Or
Yeah.
did he lose to Sam?
No. I think
2015.
he lost to Sam.
Yeah. The first 2.0 subworlds.
Yeah.
I watched
So-
that game for the first time not too long
Yeah, I
ago.
lost to Sam in top 8. I think you were talking Neil.
Talk about
Yes.
Neil, yeah.
Yeah, he was on the other side of the bracket, I believe.
Sure.
From me and Sam.
So he is the real deal for a reason. Yeah, Neil is definitely, I think, because Neil's a pretty quiet guy in general. He gets a little underestimated.
Can I just say that I love Colt? Colt just sent me the coolest looking deck I've ever seen.
Colt is great. The
Colt
Humbert
is
family in general is the best, probably overall family of players in Thrones. So, with the Kims running, the
Overall
Kempire running.
Empire. Wait, is it Jakob, your like stepbrother or something? Buzz, aren't you guys related in some way?
I'm his wife.
That's a pretty solid family.
Yeah.
No, you're related. Oh, wait, who's related to Samuel?
Jacob
Jacob.
and
That
Samuel.
Jakob is related.
Those they are brothers.
Okay.
Yeah. But I traveled
Confirmation
so
from the
much.
chat that 2015 Ibri finished 13th at Stolic, or 2017 Ibri 13th at Stolic.
Thank
Okay.
you, Dan Solo 77.
Is there any
Thanks,
other solid families and thrones?
Well, there's the Thompsons.
It's the Thompsons, but they're married.
Yeah.
They're still family.
Married. Yeah.
There's the Kempire. There's
The Kempire.
the Humberts.
The
There's
umpire.
the Humpire. Oh, that's what we should call them. Jakob and Samuel.
Wait, there's only one.
Kevin Wama.
Let's not say the.
Oh, look. Jim Hansen says during ETX, the commentators thought Nick and I were brothers, so Hansen family is pretty strong.
Yeah. I didn't know who Jim was. I was the commentator, Jim. So.
That's great.
The anonymous commentators named Roy.
Roy and Dan and Sid, and there was one other person who did it with us. I can't remember. Glazer, did you come in and do the commentary that year?
For what now?
There's the Vegas brothers.
Oh yeah, the Cliffords, Tony,
Yep.
Shane, and
yeah, and
Tony
Emma
Stroker.
and Matt, right?
Emma and Matt
Yep.
and Emma, Matt, and I mean,
and Z.
yeah, if you want to count that for sure. Seems pretty strong.
There's Dennis and his daughter. They played a total of like 3 games.
Hell yeah.
There was that family that used to play at Gen Con that was super adorable.
Wait, isn't there a solid couple from Florida that stopped playing?
Oh yeah, there was the Rosarios. Yeah,
The Rosarios, yeah.
Lauren and Caesar, and the Fitches.
The Fitches. I mean, they're very retired. The Fitches.
Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
We have
Can we
have
fix
a
that?
guy in Sweden that is like 50 or 45 maybe, and he has 5 kids maybe, and they all play card games.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Are we counting Simon Hansen from Europe? I know Nick Hansen said he lost to him while he was over there. So
That's a third Hansen.
There we go. The
Hansons
Hansen
are
family.
growing.
well, no, but Simon's
Sam and-
son beat Nick in a pickup game.
Oh yeah, no. Nick told me that. Yeah. He said he lost to like a 12-year-old in the pickup game, got rocked.
Nick should be used to that. He plays Magic. Losing to children, it's just one of those things that happens when you play Magic. There's obviously I said Kevin Wama earlier. There's of course the
Will and
Walkers, Will and Kristen, the Walkers, Joe and Gabby.
There's a guy down south that I like a lot named JD Payne, and him and his dad play.
Oh, that's really cool.
Oh.
Bop. Oh,
am I
the
missing?
Hansons. Solid reference. Goddamn, Sid, you should maybe be on the fucking podcast.
Yeah, that would be good. I'm trying to think other families. What am I missing? Oh, there's Sam and Elisa. Is that
Yep.
you?
Lisa, yes.
Yep,
Yeah,
family.
Elisa.
stuff.
They were at Iowa Worlds, and it was a real delight to see them. They're good people.
They are good
Yep.
people. There's Matt Kreft and his wife's name, who's escaping
Adrian
me.
Payette.
Yep, Adrian.
An old T-Bay
His
girl.
wife's name.
T-Bay.
His wife's name, which is escaping me, is what I said at the moment. I think
There's
that's it.
There's Dark Naj and his 2 sons, Sean Emberley and Matt Gaiman.
That's true. That's true. We gotta make sure that we get the extended Andrews family.
100% of that message.
Yep.
It
And
is
then
not
like
possible.
And then like the long lost father, Dan Struhal, who will maybe come back to us one day.
He's playing again. I've seen him grinding on the Iron Throne.
Yeah, I watch anytime I see him play. I immediately drop everything. My wife is like, seriously? I'm like, it's Dan though.
Well, you'll see at least part of the Andrews family at RTS.
What is that?
Nick. So, but all right. I think we've sort of rambled our way into a 2-hour episode, which I think is the best way to end the 50th episode of Second Sons. I really
that is a real nice microcosm.
It is definitely a microcosm. I really definitely want to appreciate everybody who's currently in chat and everyone who has sort of made us the second, or I guess not second. I remember the last time we did the dick measuring contest about this. I think we're the 3rd or 4th most listened to Game of Thrones podcast behind the White Book and Banter. So I'm really, really just proud of my contributors. I'm proud of our fans, and really thank you all for listening and watching and making it worth to have produced 55 episodes and 50 full episodes of this. So we will be back. What is it? The 29th of January with our next episode. And I
finally talk about the Greyjoy box.
to finally talk about the Greyjoy box. But remember, we don't get cards until March, so we could just like talk about one Greyjoy card for an episode and still have plenty of content. So,
I mean, I think having listened to Aaron talk, I think he could talk about the new Balon for about that long just by himself.
Oh my god, the sheer amount of stupid shit you can do with that card, and it's not even the most broken card in the box. Isn't even a Greyjoy card.
Are you talking about Carhold?
Nope. Desert Raider is the most broken card in the box.
Desert Raider is the most broken card in the box. Desert Raider is completely freaking insane.
And ending Glazer overselling Martell cards.
I'm not overselling it, Jesse.
Nope. It is broken. Not
Which
a
one?
fair card. Desert Raider.
Yeah, it's dumb.
It is not. It card should not exist.
Nope.
All right, kill the stream.
Sure.